There's real panic in the Kremlin today because of their helplessness. It took them a whole day to finally respond to the start of the US and Israel's military operation against Iran. And today, the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin stated that he condemns the elimination of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, calling the incident a cynical murder. In Moscow, propagandists initially began happily making up fake stories about dozens of Israeli and US planes being shot down. But later they sobered up and realized that things were serious. That's why they started saying that Vladimir Putin could be next. After all, Trump arrested the leader of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, is currently blockading Cuba, and also eliminated the leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei. In this chain, as you understand, the only one missing is Vladimir Putin. But most of all, Russia disgraced itself as a state in this war in the Middle East. After all, Tehran was helping Russia and killing Ukrainians. They supplied weapons. They even signed a strategic partnership agreement with the Russians. But it turned out that all of this means nothing when your counterpart is a Russian, because a Russian will always, in 101% of cases, deceive you. And now, Iran's strategic partner, the Russian Federation, just made a statement and doesn't even dare to say a word against the US. Because now it's truly scary. My name is Alexei Pechiy. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, please subscribe to this channel, give this episode a like. And friends, be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel Pechiy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as it comes in. So today in Iran, the death of Ali Khamenei has been confirmed. The death of the Secretary of the Defense Council has also been confirmed. Ali Shamkhani and the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Mohammad Pakpour. Iran will temporarily be governed by the president, the head of the judiciary, and one of the members of the Guardian Council. This is an assembly of 88 ayatollahs. This was stated by the first vice president of Iran, Mohammad Mokhber. However, later in Iran, a temporary supreme leader and a new head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps were still elected. According to the New York Times, for several months the whereabouts of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei were being tracked. The strike was originally planned to take place at night, but the US and Israel postponed it to the morning of February 28, because intelligence indicated that it was in the morning when Khamenei would be holding a meeting in Tehran. During the attack, Iranian officials were in one building of the complex, and Khamenei was in another nearby, so he was still trying to hide. CBS News, citing sources in the Pentagon, reports that as a result of the US and Israeli strikes, about 40 members of Iran's leadership were killed. After the attacks, the volume of maritime shipments through the Strait of Hormuz decreased by 70%, according to Kepler estimates. The closure of the strait could push oil prices above $100 per barrel. The strikes are ongoing. Explosions have been reported in Dubai, Doha, and Riyadh. And Iran. It is now promising a powerful retaliatory strike against American bases and targets in Israel. Trump responded by saying that Iran would be better off not doing that. And in response to all this, Iran's strategic partner, whom Tehran helped to kill Ukrainians, only stated that it condemns the US and Israeli attack on Iran. And just listen to what was stated by the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which, let me remind you, has been waging a bloody, unprovoked and unjustified war against Ukraine for 12 years, a country that has never threatened these Russians in any way. I'll now quote the official statement from the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The actions of the United States of America and Israel against Iran are a premeditated and unprovoked act of armed aggression against a sovereign and independent члена ООН. And then, the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs lamented that the operation against Tehran had begun. Quote, contrary to the signals conveyed to the Russian side about the lack of interest from the Israelis in a military confrontation with the Iranians. Well, in short, Putin's people once again said that they were deceived, tricked, betrayed, and all that usual vocabulary from Vladimir Putin. And as emphasized by the Foreign Ministry of the Russian Federation, which I remind you agreed with Tehran in January 2025 on a comprehensive strategic partnership. Such attacks by the US and Israel are violations of the fundamental principles and norms of international law. Actions against Iran are irresponsible and will lead to the destruction of peace, stability, and security in the Middle East. Washington and Tel Aviv have once again started a dangerous adventure that is rapidly bringing the region closer to a humanitarian, economic, and possibly even a radiological disaster. That was a quote from Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Well, and as the Russian ministry believes, the aggressors, as they stated, in other words, the United States of America and Israel, intend to, quote, destroy the constitutional order of Iran and eliminate the leadership of a state they dislike, which refuse to submit to forceful dictates and hegemony. The Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs also stated that the administration of US President Donald Trump has, over the past few months, allowed itself to deliver destabilizing blows to the entire world order, including interfering in the internal affairs of other countries, threatening with force, and using that force instead of peacefully resolving international disputes. Oh, those Russians are such bastards. In other words, these scum, these savage Russians, have unleashed a bloody war against Ukraine. They kill people, threaten with force, and use force. And they use this force to overthrow the country's constitutional order, eliminate its leadership, occupy territories, and completely reshape Ukraine as they wish. And these same Russians open their rotten mouths commenting on the situation. Here's another quote from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. We demand the situation be immediately returned to a political and diplomatic settlement. Russia, as before, is ready to facilitate the search for peaceful solutions based on international law, mutual respect, and a balance of interests. Wow, so you Russians are making demands? Talking about some kind of respect? Who listens to your demands? Russians, you've forgotten your place. Who do you think you are? In turn, the head of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Seryoshka Lavrov, had a phone conversation with the Iranian Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi. And so the head of Russian foreign policy condemned, quote, the unprovoked armed attack by the US and Israel on Iran, and also stated the need for the immediate cessation of these attacks. Well, there's just one thing I'd like to add here. If in all, absolutely all of these statements by the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you replace the US and Israel with Russia and Iran with Ukraine, then everything would be 100% true. This completely describes the situation of Russia's war against Ukraine. But Russians, they're such deceitful cynics who are waging a bloody war against Ukraine, yet they make some statements about violations of international law in the Middle East. By the way, speaking of cynicism, the Russian bold dictator Volodya Putin sent condolences to the president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, regarding the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and his family members, calling what happened, quote, a cynical murder. Next is the text of the telegram published on the Kremlin's website. Please accept my deepest condolences regarding the murder of the Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Sayyid Ali Khamenei, and members of his family, committed with a cynical violation of all norms of human morality and international law. Next, Putin called Khamenei an outstanding statesman who made a huge contribution to the development of Russian-Iranian relations and asked to convey his sincere condolences to the government and people of Iran. And here I would like to remind you that in June 2025, during the 12-day war and US-backed actions against Iran, Putin said that he did not even want to discuss the possibility of assassinating the Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic. Quote, if you allow me, I hope this will be the most appropriate answer to your question. I don't even want to discuss such a possibility, Putin said at the time, responding to a question about Russia's reaction in the event of the Ayatollah's elimination. And the editor-in-chief of the AFP news agency, Karim Talbi, also noted at the time that such a possibility, namely the elimination of Khamenei, was already being openly discussed by US President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, to which Vladimir Putin then once again confidently stated that this was nonsense and that this would never happen, that no one would ever eliminate Khamenei. Well, today, as you can see, Vladimir Putin is already scared for his own skin. And here I want to briefly remind you that Iran has helped Russia kill Ukrainians throughout all the years of the full-scale war by sending missiles and drones. As a result, only in January 2025 did Tehran and Moscow sign a strategic partnership agreement. And at that time, Iran hoped that this would save it from a major war with the Americans. The idea was that Iran helped Russia in the war against Ukraine, and Russia, in turn, would help Iran in a war with the US and Israel if needed. Apparently, the Iranian regime didn't realize or understand how deceitful and savage the people it was dealing with were. Already in April of the same year, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Rudenko spoke before the State Duma and clarified the nature of the agreement with Iran, stating that Russians owe nothing to the Iranians. He emphasized at the time that the agreement is not a mutual defense pact, and in the event of a US attack on Iran, Russia would not be obligated to provide military assistance to the latter. As a result, the agreement only concerns cooperation in combating common threats and refraining from supporting an aggressor, but it does not provide for collective defense. However, this same Russian clown in the State Duma added that the agreement is intended to play a stabilizing role in the Middle East. How? It's unclear. And then, for Iranian politicians who saw closer ties with Moscow as a deterrent, this signal turned out to be sobering, because later Sergei Lavrov stated, and I quote, that the Russian state has always promoted multi-vector policies as its fundamental position and therefore does not form alliances. In June 2025, the US and Israel struck Iranian nuclear facilities during the 12-day war between Israel and Iran, which lasted from June 13th to June 24th. And then, what did the Russian Foreign Ministry do? It condemned it. It strongly condemned this operation, but Iran didn't receive any help. And now, in the Kremlin, Volodya Putin can stomp his feet as much as he wants, condemn the US war against Iran, but in this situation, Russians can't do anything at all. Absolutely nothing. So I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you found this episode interesting and useful, please support the channel with your donation or a paid sponsorship subscription using the links and details in the description of this video or by scanning the QR code on your screen. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.